Do you love coffee cakes as much as I love coffee cakes? I hope so. We have 3 great variations of the traditional coffee cake to make with you today. First is a shimmering rhubarb crumb coffee cake. This is a great muffin with a wonderful streusel and jam filling. It's the ultimate coffee cake muffin. Not to be outdone, the old-fashioned, unique streusel coffee cake. Generous amounts of streusel, nuts, cinnamon, and even a glaze on top. These are 3 great coffee cake recipes that I'd like to share with you today on Martha Bakes. Every spring, when my rhubarb is in season, I like to make a rhubarb upside down cake. And it is just one of the best cakes ever. This recipe calls for a 9-inch in diameter, 3-inch deep cake pan, just like this. And you should butter the pan sides and bottom. Now, I don't know why, but softened butter works better for buttering a pan than melted butter. So now put the rhubarb in the bottom of the pan, which is really going to be the top of the cake when you invert it after it's baked. So you need 4 tablespoons of butter cut into 1/4-inch cubes. Should be in pieces just like that. And we want 1 pound of rhubarb cut on a sharp diagonal, about 1/4 inch thick. Once you have 1 pound of rhubarb all cut up into these nice oblique pieces, sprinkle 3/4 cup of sugar over the rhubarb. This gets the juices running and softens the rhubarb just a little bit. So 3/4 cup of sugar. Let that sit for a little while. You'll see what happens. And the topping is kind of fun. Notice, look what I'm using. I'm using my iPad with my recipe on it. It is such a clear way of dealing with recipes. And now while the rhubarb is soaking with sugar, you need 1/2 cup of melted butter. This is for the crumb topping, which is really the crumb bottom. So here we have 1/2 cup of butter, 1 stick, and 1 cup of all-purpose flour. Now just to fluff up the topping, I'm using a whisk and 1/2 teaspoon of salt, kosher salt, and 1/2 cup of sugar. So mix that all up together with a whisk, and then you can pour in your butter, a really nice topping. And just stir until you've got a kind of a coarse crumb. So here is your crumb topping. The rhubarb, look what happens. See how moist it is? The sugar really does start the juices of the rhubarb running. Okay, and now your buttered pan, sprinkle with an additional 4 tablespoons of butter that you have cut up into cubes. What happens here is the rhubarb, the sugar, and the butter cook in the bottom of the pan and kind of melt all together. That's what gives you this glistening, gorgeous top when you turn it out of the pan. Okay, now we can layer the rhubarb all over the bottom. So just keep arranging this till you use up the whole pound of rhubarb slices. And now it's time to make the cake batter itself, which is a very simple sour cream baking powder batter. We need 1.5 cups of flour. Again, dip and level. Just dump it right into a strainer, or I use a whisk to sift. And we have baking powder, 1.5 teaspoons. Now make sure your baking powder is fresh. 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and sift this through. There, very simple. And then in the bowl of a mixer, 1 stick of softened butter with 1 cup of sugar. You see how quickly it creams when you have the butter soft? It really makes a big difference. And 2 large eggs from the chicken. Oh, and we need the zest of a fresh, bright lemon, but only 1 teaspoon for this cake. This really brightens up the batter. This is the greatest grater. It's really a wood rasp, but it collects the zest so nicely so that you don't really have to use paper or anything. Just an amazing thing. There, that's 1 teaspoon. Just shake it off, no mess. And we also want the juice from this lemon, 1 tablespoon, which will be a little less than half a lemon. So it's time to add the dry ingredients. You can use your rubber scraper, and we're going to be adding this along with 1 cup of sour cream, alternating. Turn it on low and take some of the sour cream and add that. There. All done. My downfall, batter. So there, now just smooth it out, taking care not to move the fruit around. And then strew your streusel crumbs all over the top. The melted butter in them really helps them adhere to the final cake and adds that extra little bit of crunch to the cake itself. It's a very nice 3-layer cake. Cake is ready for the oven. Put it in 350-degree preheated oven. Set your timer 1 hour. Should I show it to you? Yes. How beautiful. There is your lovely rhubarb upside down cake. Your family, your friends, your guests will love it. Our next recipe is jam-filled, crumb-topped coffee cake muffins. Big mouthful, and each muffin really is a delicious, more than 1 mouthful. I've baked them in these paper cups, and these tear away, leaving you a spectacular muffin. So pretty. Looks like it's just been cut out of a big cake. So here we go, very easy. Cream 1½ sticks of unsalted butter at room temperature. Start this. And cream the 1½ sticks of butter with 1 cup of granulated sugar. Just cream while you get your dry ingredients ready. And it is 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Whisk it a little bit. This is another way to sift. You can use a strainer, you can use a sifter, or you could use a whisk. 1 teaspoon of baking powder and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And ½ teaspoon of salt. Don't forget the salt. So those are our dry ingredients. To this, we're going to add 2 large eggs and 2 egg yolks. So if you have a little container for the egg whites, you can use these for an angel food cake or for an icing or something. Just 2 egg yolks. Oh, what beautiful, beautiful eggs. Thank you so much, chickens. We have a big flock of chickens here in Bedford on my farm, and they have been providing us with the most extraordinary eggs. And 1 teaspoon of this very good vanilla. Nice and fluffy, very good. And the creme fraiche, well, it comes from Ronnie Brook Farms, which is a wonderful organic dairy farm right in the Hudson Valley. And we need 2/3 of a cup of the creme fraiche. And this will be added alternately with the dry ingredients. And just get that mixed up really well. Don't overbeat. And there. That's your batter. And just give it 1 Last little stir with a rubber scraper. It's a little bit heavier than a cake batter, but that's because it's a muffin, and it will hold up very nicely in the little paper cups that we're going to bake it in. Very nice. And now we have to quickly make the crumb topping for our muffins. We have 1.5 cups all-purpose flour, a 1/2 cup of light brown sugar, and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of good cinnamon. And this is a crumb topping that utilizes melted butter. 1/4 pound of melted unsalted butter. So that's our crumb topping. Let it sit until the butter is absorbed into the dry ingredients. And these papers are called panettone papers, and they're available at cake supply stores, baking supply stores. These are great. I think they're $15 for 100 of these papers. And they really are very pretty, and they make the muffin a gift rather than just a muffin. So I have strawberry jam here. These are wonderful jams with whole strawberries. And I have a black raspberry jam. So here, black raspberry and strawberry. So now we can fill our papers and use a ice cream scoop. Really makes this job very easy. Use about a 1 ounce scoop. So you put 2 scoops in here. If you're not used to using ice cream scoops like this, it makes it so easy. It's great for cookies, for cupcakes, for muffins. Really saves a lot of time and a lot of mess. And a heaping teaspoon of your favorite jam. There. So I'll do some with black raspberry and some with strawberry. Oh, yummy. Strawberries right from my garden. And then the crumb topping. 1 heaping tablespoon in each. Fill all your papers, and then put your muffins right into a 325-degree oven and set your timer for 20 minutes. Let them cool on a rack, and you're gonna have the most delicious crumb-topped muffins you have ever tasted. And now I'm gonna show you how to make the ultimate streusel cake. This is an old-fashioned coffee cake that is so delicious. It's exactly the kind of coffee cake I think of when I think of Sunday morning, cafe au lait, and a big chunk of old-fashioned coffee cake. This is made in a bundt pan. This is the modern bundt pan. You probably have one of these in your kitchens. There are 60 million or so of these in American kitchens as I speak. The first bundt pan was mentioned, I think, in America in the Old Settlement Cookbook in 1901. Many German immigrants brought with them from the old country these beautiful earthenware bundt pans. I have a small collection of these, and I adore them. This is made in Germany, and it's a beautiful pottery pan, glazed. This is an American version from the Pennsylvania Dutch country. This is probably settlers who brought the style of their bundt pan with them from the old country and made it in redware. But these are available still, and you can get them new or old. It just depends on what shape that you like. We're going to make the streusel filling crumb. We have 1.5 cups of light brown sugar. Break up any big lumps with your fingers. 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. That's a goodly amount of cinnamon. And a large pinch, like that, of cloves, ground cloves. They're strong, so don't use too many cloves. And again, you can use your fingers. 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. White. And 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour. So you see there's a lot more sugar to flour in this particular crumb that we're making. Mix this up with your fingers. You can put a little bit of salt if you like, and I always like to put salt in my crumb, like 1/4 teaspoon. And the butter, rather than melting the butter, we're just going to put in room temperature butter, 1 whole stick, and break that up just to start the mixing process. Add your nuts, 1½ cups of pecans, coarsely chopped, not finely chopped. You want real nuts visible in the streusel. Set that aside and mix up your cake batter. In the bowl of a mixer, cream 10 tablespoons of unsalted room temperature butter, and you can start that creaming, and 1 cup of sugar. Mix that up, and we're going to have 3 large eggs. I like the brown eggs. Let that cream and get the dry ingredients ready. We have 2½ cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So, oh, look how nice and creamy that is. 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And we're pretty much ready to add the dry ingredients alternately with 1¼ cups of sour cream. Very easy. And that is pretty much a lovely batter. So now we're going to use the Nordic ware bundt pan and spray this generously with Pam with flour. This is a very good way to create an additional non-stick surface. There. And our crumbs look good. Our batter looks delicious. Put little bits of it all in the bottom. So spread this out and make a little well in the batter, making sure that you get it all down in the nooks and crannies of the bundt pan. And 2/3 of this delectable mixture goes right here. And for me, there's never enough crumb, never enough streusel. And then put the rest of the batter on top. And spread this out too. The beauty of this particular bundt pan is that it is very well defined. The cake is well defined when it comes out of the oven. The pan has very nice sharp indentations, and it makes a shapely cake. Get your crumbs all over the top. And get it into your preheated oven, and the oven should be preheated to 350 degrees. Pretty. Get it into the oven, set your timer for 1 hour. And now to gild the lily, we're going to put a little bit of a Confectioners Sugar Glaze on the churned out cake. It's delicious. Here's the cake, ready to be churned out onto a cake pedestal, cake platter. Just turn this over. Ooh, it sounds good. A very nice cake. And into 2½ cups of sifted confectioner's sugar, add approximately 1/4 cup of milk. And you can whisk this. It makes a nice thick glaze. And the reason that you sift the confectioner's sugar is it makes it so much easier to make a smooth glaze. You don't want lumps in your glaze. And this looks very nice and smooth. And then you can just spoon this over the top of the cake. Let it run down, And it will harden naturally, and when you slice it, every slice will have a little bit of glaze. So there, the ultimate Streusel coffee cake. Ready for a piece? I am.